All right, Developer's Backyard. Welcome to another release of the Developer's Backyard. I know someone's going to ask why I read it. They're going to say, Sajam, are you reading this out loud because your viewers don't know how to read? No. We'd like to answer your questions, so please send them via this form. Can I just say, these Developer Backyards are great. Having the direct communication, not only where you can ask questions to the devs, but like the ability to just sit down and read their thoughts and see what they're thinking about and see what they're interested in and stuff, I think is really important for the game. I will always read them. I'm always going to be interested in them. I'm a big fan. Question 1, I think there's 5 questions. Is your goal with Guilty Gear Strive to create a complex fighting game or a simpler one? Great question. I feel like all the simplification talk has really soured people's opinions about Strive. They like try to be like, you know, the game's gonna be simplified, and people were like, boo, and they're like, okay, well, not that simplified, and then people are like, huh, but you already said that they're gonna be, and they're like, well, it's gonna be simple but hard, and everybody's like, all right, make up your goddamn mind, what's happening? So I'm happy that they're expanding on this, and I think the answer is interesting. So they say, first, I'd like to establish that we believe that simple and easy are separate concepts. With previous games in the series, new players would not be able to understand what's going on in the match when they watched high-level plays, so they wouldn't feel very interested or motivated to improve. I don't know that I agree. I'm sure many of you in here are not high-level Guilty Gear players. In fact, probably none of you are. And I'm not a high-level Guilty Gear player, but I love watching Guilty Gear. I think it's a very fun game to watch. Now, maybe they mean that at a surface level, fighting game fans enjoy it, but people who are casuals, who don't, like, you know, get into the audience at all, those people, right, are the people they're talking about, but I'm not sure. Anyway, because of that, we were working to make the appearance of moves and general impression of the game easier to comprehend compared to prior entries in the series, right? Obviously, counter hit, like the counter hit with the slowdown, the zoom ins and everything that happens. I do think that stuff like Tekken's counter hit, zoom, and the slowdown that they have at the end of the round, those things are cool. Those things definitely help, I think, casual spectating, right? So I think potentially they could be useful in Gear. I just don't want them to feel disruptive to play. There was some weird stuff going on. So I think they need to be very careful. You want it to be impactful. In Tekken, not every move has a big, you die when you get hit by an animation. Not every move is like Steve's counter hit back one. If every move is just like, boom, I'm fucking dead, nuclear explosion, no, like it loses its appeal very quickly because you're like, well, whatever you get hit in this game, everything explodes. So they say, however, advanced techniques would be accordingly difficult to perform. After all, if everyone chooses the same actions and combos and set play in particular end up with only one correct option, this would take away from Guilty Gear's unique appeal. You know, here's the situation. No matter how unique or how fun or interesting you make the game, people will find the way to optimize and make the correct choices, right? Like, if you don't know how to find combos in Guilty Gear, you go watch somebody else, you see what combo they're doing, and you copy their combo and you do it. If there is a confirm in a situation that's unique, someone will figure out that confirm, and then people will do that confirm in that situation. If there is a particular best set play option or a particular best thing to do on a knockdown, people will see that and do that option. It's tough to make it so that everybody's always doing different things. This part, it's going to happen. You know, I believe that the solution to getting new players to enjoy matches is not to make the game itself easier, but rather to create a ranking system that makes it easier for them to play with others who are around the same skill level. You know, I'm sure that you guys feel the same way. When you play a new game, being able to play against people who are your skill level really helps. The big issue that a lot of Arxis games have in particular, right, is when you get on there and you play, there's only one way to find players, and that's going to like player matches or whatever, right? Or whatever the lobby is. You can't really queue up in player matches. You can't really queue up in ranked matches. You just have to go to a random lobby. You go to West Coast lobby number 6, and there could be a chance that 0 of the players in there are beginner players. So if there's a ranking mode, or if there's a way to have players play similarly skilled opponents, this could really help. You have to make sure that this system works well, and it gets people playing in the way that, you know, makes sense. If no one participates in the ranked modes like the other games, then the ranked modes don't matter. There's got to be a creative way to do this, because they kind of struggle to find people playing any mode that's not just their open lobby, because those are the best ones by far. People just don't play the ranked modes. They're just not worth it. So they say also the techniques in GGST are difficult in a different way than those in previous Guilty Gear games. Our goal for this game is to create something new and equally challenging for all players. I hope their intention is to make a difficult and complex game, right? Because you want Guilty Gear to be fast-paced, complex, fun, really open to your own interpretation and your own decision-making as a player to do what you want to do and move where you want to move. It doesn't feel very static. It's a game where there's lots of choices that feel fun to make. And I think by making a ranked mode that's good, or finding ways, even if it's in a lobby, to have people play similarly skilled opponents, that will really help. And having Netcode where you can play people far away from you means the potential chance for you to play players similar to your skill is much higher. So It's important. Anyway, Daisuke just says, yo, I talked about this in the roundtable. Don't worry about me. Second question. Will the story in Guilty Gear Strive be a continuate? Third question. I've noticed that there's a few subtle, almost hidden mechanics and techniques, such as changing direction when roaming canceling, an air dash, or by using faultless defense after an air dash to fall faster. Do you plan... I don't care about the lore, chat room. Do you plan on having more similar, advanced, and unique techniques? Are there more that the players seem to have missed in the beta? Yes, even as of the closed beta test, we included many more techniques than those we've explained. We wanted to collect data about what players would find and how they would use it in the limited time with the game. We wanted everyone to play the game, particularly in regard to the new mechanics, in a neutral state. So maybe the intention was to see how people played the game after them not giving away a lot of the details about how it played, and maybe they'll give more detail in the future versions. I think that educating your viewers is very important, and by having them aware of like a baseline and teaching them where the baseline is, they have a better idea about what they should be doing early. But you do have influence on how they play. In the end, we want to leave room for the players' discoveries to exceed our expectations. Also, although we are still working on the game, there are going to be many major changes compared to the closed beta test. We'll have more information later. When you have a more educated audience, they're more interested in listening to when you talk about changes or why changes happen, and also they're more in touch with how the game is going to be played, what things are going to be happening, etc. If you're, speaking with them and communicating with them and stuff. If you just kind of let them figure it out, you really rely on people who are content creators or who have large voices teaching and educating the audience, or the audience has to go learn it by watching people play or learning the game in that way, right? So like it changes how the audience learns and how fast the audience can learn. If it's out on official channels, it obviously has a big influence in how people play the game. Yeah, they just wanted to see what people thought. Why aren't you guys addressing rollback netcode in these blogs? I promise this was not me. Can I just say that? The silence around the net play is truly worrisome. Now look, this is not me, because if you recall, chat room, every time I've talked about Strive's rollback, I've said the same thing, which is I predict that we will be able to play Strive's rollback before the game comes out. It just makes sense. Why would they not want to show people that the netcode is great? Think about the next beta coming out. It has rollback that's working. I hop on, I play against Giuna in Japan, and they're watching a match from the US to Japan working on functioning rollback netcode. And there's thousands of people watching on Twitch, thousands of people watching on both of our YouTube channels who are like, holy shit, the netcode of this game looks fucking sick. Oh my God. Think about the goodwill that beta creates for the game versus what happened with the first beta. Not only that, but it allows them to test their netcode and make sure that it works. And when they're positive the netcode is going to look good, then they allow people to play against each other from far distances and show, hey, you can play our game with your friends across the country. You can play with our game with your friends across the world. That makes them look so good. So that's why I assume this would be how they're going to do it. So anyway, the answer. We are hoping to show the players our netcode not through a section of developers' backyard, but rather when the players can play the game for themselves. We ask for your patience until then. This is what I'm asking for. A beta of the game with working rollback netcode. I feel like this will wipe away so many bad feelings that people have. Don't take our word for it. Try it yourself, right? Just try it yourself. You guys can try it yourself and see how it works. Even if the rollback works, game hasn't sold me yet. I mean, that's fair enough. It doesn't have to be the only selling point. But if you're excited for the game, it having rollback is a great inclusion. I really, really hope that they have a rollback beta for everybody to try. Ranking system. They're really yelling about this ranking system a lot in this one, which I think is interesting. With the ranking system in Xrd, intermediate level players would be randomly matched with high level players and end up ranking down. On the other hand, however, being able to choose your opponent could also create a disparity in ability between players in the same rank. The problem with choosing people too is people duck you a lot. Do you guys remember in Street Fighter 4, you could choose who you would play? I would run into these Viper players and I played Elena. So these Viper players would dodge me. They would kick me from their lobby as soon as I joined. I would just steal their player points all day. I'd just be smoking them. And they would not play me anymore. They just stopped playing me. They just kicked me from the room every time I joined. And they're like one of the only people I have good connections with, right? So because I was smoking them, they would just boot me out of the lobby. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts about these ranking systems, as well as what's your plan to do from here on. My personal thinking is that we don't need rankings in our small community. I do think that it's important to get a sense of satisfaction within your own group. However, so I think that having something like Titles as Master of the Soul matchup might be good enough. This is a long-ass question about ranking matches. Also, this person put however multiple times, which is interesting. They're a big fan of however. We plan to announce the details of our system using a different channel, but I can tell you that the rank system will be completely different from prior games. Before, we made systems for the games in arcades and used those ideas as a base when making console versions. I like this answer, by the way. However, since we're developing the game with online matches in mind from the start, the baseline is already quite different. I'm glad to hear that they're not making an arcade ranking mode and then porting it over to console. They're like, we're developing with online play in mind. Online rankings from the start. That's important. We've noticed players would avoid playing modes that impacted their ranks because they didn't like losing points. This is the Viper players. Having multiple online modes split the player base, making it difficult for beginners in particular to match with those people around their skill level. Having ranked modes, player matches, lobby matches, meant that people would just go play in lobby matches. No one played in ranked, no one played in player matches. Like, if you think about the ranked or the modes in like something like Street Fighter, people just play ranked or casual and lobby. Those are the modes, right? But because the ranked match gives you similarly skilled opponents, people play it. We see these two issues as major problems, and our goal is to avoid them with this game. I'd also like to address that this now is related to online modes. We are implementing more online features in this game for those who want to take their matches seriously. My understanding of all Arxis games and why I don't play ranked in Granblue, for instance, is in Granblue, you may find good players, right, by trying to play ranked, but the connections are whack. All the matches are dog shit. The only good players on when you're on is someone from the East Coast who you have 6 frames delay with or something. You know, it's very difficult to find people of your skill level on at the same time as you who have good connection with you. So in this game, if you have better netcode and you have a ranking match that gets you similarly skilled opponents better, that's a slam dunk right there. Just by having better netcode, you can play someone who's far from you, right? Yeah, the other thing about lobbies is I think lobbies are great for connecting and getting matches quickly, but lobbies need to have an indicator of what the connection is like, and preferably the lobby shows you the skill level or ranking of your opponent. Question 6. How does the team feel about the current state of instant blocking and faultless defense, IB and FD? With the added emphasis on risk, even though it's hard to see how the UI is implemented, thank you for putting this in there and leaving it in there, FD seems to have a strong place as a defensive option. It both minimizes risk gain and allows for forcing whip punishes from a defender who is making good decisions and paying attention to their opponents. However, IB seems like it has lost a lot of its interesting aspects from prior titles and only exists because it used to. Yeah, this is kind of my concern as well. And yeah, in this version, IB doesn't do anything besides gain meter. Is this enough to keep IB interesting and worth the risk, or does it need further refining and iteration to become a more thoughtful option? We are also continually debating defensive game mechanics. To address instant block specifically, in the closed beta test, we simply decreased the reward gain from successfully IBing in order to avoid IBing becoming a prerequisite for matches and strategy. However, this removed any incentive to try IBing, while also failing to improve the mechanic because the input required remained unchanged. So we're currently rethinking the input and effect of IB completely. You kind of have to, right? If IBing only gains you meter, but is risky, and FDing gains you a massive reward, it's like, why would I just IB? It doesn't make any sense. So as you're getting hit, you block at the last second, right? So each hit of the block, the Gatling, you're just block, and you build meter, but is that even worth it? Our plan is to make the mechanics something more exciting by the next time you can play the game. Look forward to what we come up with. So, you know, what are they going to do, right? And then the next volume, they say they're going to do another volume with more questions in October, and they're accepting submissions for topics you'd like to discuss. So you can put your comments in if you have a question you'd like to see them ask. But I think they did a good job. They did a good job with most of these answers. In fact, I think that this answer is great, right? Saying basically, you know, we tried IBing. We didn't want IBing to be a necessary requirement to play the game, but yeah, it was kind of bad. I love this answer because for me, I remember in the beta, I was like, well, I don't know. I don't understand IBing. It feels like you only really need to FD, and there's not really a reason to IB. The only reason I did it was out of habit, right? And so, like, people were like, well, you know, maybe it's because, like, even they were like, ah, yeah, you're right. You guys, you got us. It doesn't make much sense. It's great that I think that they admit this. We tried something new with IB. It didn't really do what we want, so we're going to have to try it again. Anyway, the ranked mode has to be, first of all, it has to connect you with similarly skilled opponents and do a good job of that. Second of all, the ranked mode needs to be smart in that it has rewards that's meaningful, and it needs to reset occasionally. I think that's a good developer backyard. pretty solid. I'm a big fan.
Listen.
You know what I miss about Lee Chung? When the playoffs for basketball were happening like a year or two ago, he would email Christopher Seglia, who's a Warriors fan, he lives in San Francisco, to talk shit about the way the playoffs were going. He would literally type emails and be like, I hope your team's ankles break, you bastard. They're not even that good. Like, he was talking shit through email. Can you imagine Lee Chung firing up an email and is fitted? Like, oh man.